Okay, let's go ahead and talk about issuing bonds between interest dates. Now, in most of the textbook examples, we start with the assumption that the bonds are dated January 1st and they're sold January 1st. That's generally not going to be the case, though. Usually, bonds will not be issued on their dated date. Why would that be? Well, first there might be poor market conditions. Again, it takes a year, 18 months to bring a bond to issue, and on the date that the bond's legal existence start, on the dated date, there might be a short-term spike in interest rates, and we don't want to try to issue bonds in that sort of credit markets. We might say, look, let's go ahead and wait 2, 3, 5, 6 months, and market conditions will improve, and we'll be able to issue the bonds under more favorable conditions. It may be that we're not ready. Again, we plan our bond issuance a year in advance, and we say, okay, we're going to get these things to market on January 15th. January 15th rolls around, and we're not quite ready yet for whatever reason, and so we simply can't issue the bonds yet. Finally, the issuance might be spread out over time, especially if it's a really large issuance of tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. We may be concerned that issuing all the bonds on a single date would not be to our advantage. We'd be better off sort of allocating them to the market in dribs and drabs over an extended period of time. Now, how does this affect what we need to do? Let's start with a real short, simple example to illustrate the difficulty. Let's assume we want to issue 10 $1,000 bonds, so that'll be $10,000. They've got a 12% coupon. Interest is paid annually on December 31st. Each $1,000 bond therefore earns $120 of interest annually. Bonds are dated January 1st at 1, and for whatever reason, we spread the bond issuance out in the following manner. January 1st, we issue 3 bonds. February 1st, we issue 2 more bonds. March 1st, we issue 1 bond, and then on May 1st, we issue the remaining 4 bonds. Now, if we don't do something, we're going to have an accounting source record-keeping problem at year-end. The people who bought the bonds on January 1st, 01, they're entitled to a full year's interest of $120. The people who bought the bonds on February 1st are only entitled to 11 months worth of interest, or $110. The people who bought the bonds on March 1st are only entitled to 10 months worth of interest, and the people who bought the bonds on May 1st are only entitled to 8 months. Clearly, we're going to have a problem writing checks for different amounts of interest and being sure the right person gets the right amount. Now, again, this was a very simple example, only 10 bonds sold on 4 dates. You can imagine how complex it gets if there are thousands of bonds issued, on not every day, but issued on multiple dates during the year. If you think about it, if a given bond is sold on March 1st and it gets resold 2 or 3 times before year end, when we write a check on December 31st, we have to know, okay, who's holding the bond that was sold on March 1st, so we can give them the $100 to which they're entitled. There has to be an easier way to handle this. So what do? We want to set up our accounting system so that we only have to write checks for a full year's interest, in this case $120. No matter when you bought the bond, January, February, April, or December, you're going to get a check for a full year's interest. Now, if somebody bought a bond on March 1st, they're only entitled to 10 months worth of interest, and yet we're going to give them a check for $120. Are we going to simply give them the extra money and say thank you very much? No, of course not. What we're going to do is, when we sell bonds between interest dates, the bond buyer pays us for the bond, plus any interest which is accrued on the bond. The understanding is that at the end of the year, we'll give that person a check for a full year's interest, giving them back the accrued interest that they paid us in advance, plus giving them what they had earned since they bought the bond. Now, there are 2 ways we can handle this. Let's work with a single $1,000 bond, 12% coupon, so it's a nice round $120 per year or $10 per month. It's dated January 1st, 01, interest paid annually, and it's sold on March 1st at par plus accrued interest. Now, we're going to receive par value for the bond, $1,000, plus $20 for the 2 months of accrued interest. Under the first method, which seems intuitively more appealing, we're going to record the receipt of cash, we're going to have the bond payable at $100, and we're going to have interest payable of $20. And again, that's the money that we have to return to the bond buyer at December 31st. When December 31st rolls around, we'll write the check for $120, and we'll give the bond buyer back their $20 that they advanced to us, plus give them the $100 that they earned. Under the second method, Um, Again, think back to what we did when we talked about reversing entries. The problem with method 1 is we've got to keep track of that interest payable. In method 2, we avoid that problem by taking that $20 we receive and putting it as a credit or a negative balance in interest expense. That way, when we write the check at the end of the year, there's no interest payable to pay off. We simply put the entire $120 into interest expense, and obviously if you look at the two interest expense entries under method 2, a $20 credit, a $120 debit, it nets out to the proper $100 of interest expense. Now, selling bonds between interest dates also affects the calculation for the amortization of discounts or premiums. Let's go and assume we have $100,000 of 12% 2-year bonds. Again, nice short 2-year time horizon. $100,000 of 12% 2-year bonds dated January 1st, 01, interest paid annually on December 31st, and they mature 12/31/02. They're issued on November 1st, 101 at $101,400, a $1,400 premium, and we'll assume straight line amortization. Now at first blush we might say, oh, this is easy. It's $1,400 premium spread over 2 years, $700 per year. Now that's not quite what we want to do though. Again, amortization is part of the process of matching expense to the period benefited. Now we don't benefit for a full 2 years. These bonds start to benefit us when we issue them and borrow somebody's money. So they only benefit us from November 1st, 01 through 12/31/02, which is 14 months, a year and 2 months. So if we were to take a full $700 in 2001 and $700 in 2002, that wouldn't be proper matching. We're going to benefit a lot more in 2002, so we should have more matching in 2002. There were two ways to do everything. We can get a monthly rate, say $1,400 divided by 14 months is $100 per month, and then take 2 months worth of amortization, so 2 times 100, obviously 200. Or we can get an annual rate. Basically, 1 year and 2 months is 1.1666666, etc. years. So $1,400 divided by 1.16666 years is $1,200 per year. And so for 2001, we'd say, well, we have 2 months, so 2/12 of an annual period, 2/12 times 1,200, $200 again.